Imagine a week of nothing but rain. Not a light drizzle. A full, heavy, relentless downpour that doesn't stop for 7 days straight. You're stuck inside. The Netflix is on. The delivery app is open. Maybe you're a little bored, a little restless. Maybe you spiral into some strange late-night thoughts. That's you today. Now strip all of it away. No walls, no roof, no fire on demand, no stored food, no phone, no blanket that didn't come from an animal you killed yourself. Just you, the rain, and an entire week to survive it. Most people assume ancient humans simply suffered through it, huddled somewhere miserable, waiting for it to stop. But that's not what actually happened, and the truth reveals something about you that most people never stop to think about. Stay until the end. The last part will completely change how you see the way your brain works on a quiet, gray, rainy afternoon. So, what did ancient humans actually do when the sky fell for a week? Let's start with where they went. Because the first question isn't what they did, it's where they even were. For most of human prehistory, our ancestors didn't live in permanent shelters. They moved, constantly, following food, following animals, following seasons. Home was wherever you stopped for the night, but rain changes the rules fast. Imagine you are there, 60,000 years ago, somewhere in what is now southern Europe. The sky cracks open. Within an hour, every trail you know is a river. Every sleeping spot you had last night is a puddle. The fire you built is drowned. Where do you go? You go where humans have always gone when everything outside is hostile. You go into the rock. Caves were not glamorous. They were not warm and cozy homes. They were emergency shelters. Dark, damp, occasionally occupied by animals that didn't want to share, but they were dry. And dry when it's raining is everything. Archaeologists have found the traces of exactly this kind of use at sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa, Cueva de los Casares in Spain, and dozens of sites throughout the Levant. Evidence of fires lit in short bursts, tools made and abandoned, people moving in, riding out the weather, moving on. Researcher Francesco De Rico and his colleagues studying these sites found that cave use spiked during periods that climate models associate with sustained rainfall, not permanent habitation, temporary refuge, the ancient version of waiting out a storm in a parking garage. But once you're in the cave, once the fire is going and the rain is hammering outside, what do you actually do for hours? For days? Here's where it gets fascinating. You make things. Not because you had a to-do list, because making things is what human hands do when they are idle. Stone tool production leaves behind a very specific kind of archaeological signature. Tiny flakes, cores that have been worked in long, patient sessions. And when researchers analyze cave sites that show temporary rain shelter use, they find exactly this. Long, detailed flint knapping sessions. Tools being refined well beyond what was strictly needed for immediate survival. At Sibudu Cave in South Africa, researchers led by Lynn Wadley found evidence of incredibly fine tool production happening in what appeared to be extended camp sessions. Not quick utility tools. Careful, patient, almost meditative work. The kind of work you do when you have nowhere to be and nothing but time. Think about the last time you were stuck inside on a rainy day. What did you do with your hands? Maybe you reorganized something. Maybe you built something. Maybe you cooked something more elaborate than usual. Maybe you picked up a craft you hadn't touched in months. Your brain hasn't changed in 60,000 years. The urge to make something when you're grounded? That's ancient. That's not modern restlessness. That is a deep, pre-wired human response to forced stillness. But tool making is only part of it. Because here's what's strange, the most famous human art in the entire archaeological record, the cave paintings, the handprints, the ochre animals leaping across the walls of Lascaux and Altamira and Chauvet, they are almost all found in the back of caves, deep inside, away from the entrance. And researchers have noticed something interesting. These paintings aren't near the living areas. They're not near the fire pits or the tool-making zones. They're in the dark interior spaces, the places you'd only go if you had time, if you had enough fuel to carry a lamp that far, if you weren't rushing. Paleoanthropologist Iain Davidson has argued for years that the specific placement of cave art suggests it was produced during periods of extended cave use, not a quick ritual visit. Long stays, rainy season stays. Imagine being deep inside a cave, a small lamp burning animal fat just enough to see. The sound of rain completely gone, muffled by 100 feet of rock above you. Silence. And a wall in front of you that someone decided to fill with the most vivid alive animals you have ever seen. They weren't decorating, they were doing what humans do when they're stuck, and thinking and feeling something they can't put into words. They were making art. And this brings us to something even stranger. The rain didn't just change what people did with their hands, it changed what they did with their mouths, language, storytelling, the transmission of knowledge. One of the biggest open questions in anthropology is when human language became complex enough to carry real information. Not just alarm calls, not just signals, but actual stories. Cause, effect, memory, warning, myth. Some researchers, including Daniel Everett, have argued that complex symbolic language requires exactly the kind of forced social proximity that bad weather creates. You can't communicate much when everyone is scattered across a 5-mile hunting range. But pack 20 people into a cave for 6 days? Now you have to talk. And not just about food. About the hunt that went wrong last season. About the crossing where someone was lost. About what happens after you die. About why the sky makes water, and where it goes when it stops. Anthropologist Sterelny has written extensively about the idea that extended social downtime was one of the key drivers of cultural accumulation in early humans. The rainy day, in this view, is not a gap in human progress. It is the engine of it. Stories travel fastest when people are sitting still. Think about your own family. Think about the things you know about your grandparents, or their parents, or the place where your family came from. Chances are you learned most of it not during busy, active moments. You learned it sitting around a table, on a long car ride, on a rainy afternoon when there was nothing else to do. That knowledge came to you through exactly the same mechanism ancient humans used. Forced proximity, idle time, rain. But there's one more layer here, and it's the one most people never think about. What about sleep? We talk a lot about what ancient humans did during the day. But a week of rain doesn't just affect waking hours, it affects the whole cycle. Researcher Jerome Siegel studied the sleep patterns of modern hunter-gatherer groups who still live without artificial light, groups in Tanzania, Namibia, and Bolivia, and found something that surprised everyone. They didn't sleep for 8 straight hours. They slept in 2 distinct phases, separated by an hour or 2 of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night, during heavy rain. During extended shelter periods, that middle-of-the-night waking window almost certainly stretched. More darkness. More stillness. More time lying awake in a cave listening to water. What do you do when you wake in the dark and can't go back to sleep? You think. You remember. You plan. You talk quietly to the person next to you. Historian Roger Ekirch, who studied historical references to segmented sleep across dozens of cultures, found consistent references to this nighttime waking as a kind of natural contemplation time. People described using it to pray, to process dreams, to have quiet conversations they couldn't have during the day. Now stretch that across a week of rain. Multiple nights of extended darkness. Extended stillness. This wasn't wasted time. This was when the inner life of early humans ran deepest. This is when they thought about who they were, what they feared, what they hoped for. If you have ever woken at 3 a.m. and found your brain suddenly uncomfortably alive, thinking about something you've been avoiding or suddenly understanding something you couldn't figure out during the day, you know exactly what that space feels like. That space is ancient, possibly as old as the rain itself. So what did ancient humans do when it rained all week? They sheltered. They made tools with more care than survival required. They made art in the deepest, quietest parts of the earth. They told stories that would take 10,000 years to be written down. They lay awake in the dark and thought about things that had no answer. They did what you do. They turned inward. And here's what strikes me about all of this. We have spent the last 200 years building a world where forced stillness is almost impossible. We fill every quiet moment. We reach for a screen. We play a sound. We make sure the silence never lasts long enough to become uncomfortable. We have worked very hard to never be stuck in the rain. But those long, rainy weeks weren't just survival challenges. They were the forge, the storytelling, the first art, the language that held everything together, the deep night thinking that made us who we are. The rain didn't interrupt human progress. The rain was the room where it happened, and the next time a gray sky pins you inside and you feel that restless reaching for your phone itch, that itch is 60,000 years old. And maybe, just maybe, the ancient thing to do is put the phone down and let the rain do its job.